Welcome to my Star Rail account review. The game just celebrated its 1-year anniversary not too long ago, and since I'm not an original person, I wanted to showcase my account. I thought I'd start it off in the Parlor car so you can hear my choice in music. Yeah, I'm a bit of a basic bitch, so my Parlor music is Wildfire. As you might expect, I'm maxed level, Trailblazer 70, and Equilibrium 6. If I come over to my character archive, you can see I started Star Rail on the 26th of April, which is the release date, so yes, I am a day 1 player, even if it doesn't look like it as I progress through the account. Hopping out of the game really quick, if I come over to my Hoyo lab, you'll see I have 458 days active in Star Rail. As of recording this, Star Rail has been out for 475 days, so yeah, I do need to touch some grass. Let's take a look at how much I spent in those 458 days. And the answer is nothing. Star Rail has had the unfortunate circumstance of coming after Genshin, so I've already learned my lesson about spending in gacha games. This is my quest progression, but honestly, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch all of Penacony because I was so unbelievably bored during all the quests that I fell asleep. I'm not a huge achievement hunter, but here they are if you want to see them. Oh, funny little anecdote. When I started editing this video, I had 420 achievements, and I thought, oh, this will be a great joke to make, but I did Yunli's trial quest, and it gave me an achievement and totally ruined it. Now, before I show you my progress in the late game content, I want to express this statement clearly. I play Star Rail in a casual sense. Mostly I log in, spend resin, and log off. I'm not super invested into events or late game content. My account, while having a lot of active days, is not super impressive. It'll be pretty obvious as you see more that there isn't a whole lot of grinding going on beneath the surface. The reason I haven't been too interested in progressing in these modes is because my ultimate goal when I started was to max every character. There wasn't too many characters in the game, and I thought if I just spent my Trailblazer power that I could just do it pretty easily. I mostly spend my resin on traces, so the game quickly outpaced me and I never really cared to catch back up to it. But everyone plays the game a little bit differently. I haven't revisited any of these game modes simply because I'm not that invested into the game when compared to Genshin. Star Rail is a lot newer and just different than Genshin, and it doesn't hold as special of a place in my heart. If you want to hear me talk more about Star Rail versus Genshin, stick around for a bit because towards the end of the video I'm going to go over my thoughts on Genshin versus Star Rail, which I know is a bit of a hot topic for some people. So moving on to MOC and PureFiction, you're going to notice a similar trend. While I occasionally will try out some of the cycles, I'm not invested into clearing them, and for the most part just auto battle until failure. One of my biggest issues with these endgame modes is I just don't have the teams necessary to clear them. I'll be going over my characters, including my thoughts on their strengths and how they perform for me as a free-to-play player in a little bit, so stick around or skip ahead, I don't really care. So as you can see, in MOC I'm stuck on stage 9, and this is a combination of two things. One being my characters just aren't as invested in as they need to be, and two is just a massive skill issue on my part. I haven't really manually battled anything since the Wofu fight, except for the Sunday boss. That fight was a doozy. I cleared the cycle of PureFiction up to stage 4, but I only got 8 stars. I did actually try out the new ApocShadow, but only difficulty 1. To be honest, when I did my run, I was like, oh, this is so easy. I don't know why people are like complaining about Kafka. I had like no issues whatsoever. Then I realized there was 3 more difficulties, so I just gave up because I thought I couldn't clear them. There's actually a train here? Yeah, okay. There's no train here. Oh, I got an achievement. Before I get to the characters, I'm just going to flip through my inventory really quick for any of you that care about the stuff in here. Nothing too interesting in here. I have 4 tracks left because I'm saving up to max out either Topaz or Jade in one sitting. I only have 8 5-star light cones, and the only limited one is Acheron's. I've been meaning to get... I do want Blade's light cone because it's like the only good light cone for him, but I missed it on the second rerun, so I've really just been waiting for that third one. The only artifact I can actually think of that's interesting in my whole account is Blade's handpiece. It was actually the second 5-star piece that I fully maxed out, and it somehow managed to roll every stat into crit damage. And then there's just these random materials that no one really cares about. Lastly, I do want to show off that I have 5 million credits, 7,900 Jades, and 15 passes. I usually have less than 100,000 credits because I'm maxing characters constantly, but since I ran out of crowns or tracks of destiny or whatever they're called, I took a break just to gather back resources for a little bit. Now let's take a look at my teams. This was my OG team that basically everyone used at the start of the game. It's not that interesting. This was my team that I used through most of the 3 areas, and it just consisted of every 5-star that I pulled. I don't really use my Seele team in the overworld, and I don't really use her at all because I don't have Silverwolf. I think Seele can still put in work, but only in specific places, and I don't really play her when I'm auto battling. This was my Dr. Ratio team originally, but I had to change it up because of Topaz. I was running Ratio, Ruan Mei, Pela, Bailu, but he didn't have the damage I needed, so I dropped him. Then the break meta hit, and I ended up pulling Topaz, so I stuck her on his team, but she's not built yet, so I haven't had the opportunity to test how it performs. This is a Blade Jingliu team that I tried to run for a while, but Lynx was nowhere near enough healing to sustain all 3 units. I haven't gotten rid of the team because... Actually, I don't know why I haven't gotten rid of the team yet. So this is my main team, and it looks almost exactly like the last one. It just has Xuan swapped in for Ruan Mei. Now, like I said, I'm gonna have a whole section later on where I talk about characters and performance in depth, but I'll just say for now that this team does not feel good anymore. It's still my main team because it's comfortable, and I really like these characters, but it needs some changes to work properly. This next team is my makeshift Acheron team. If you didn't know, I am a huge fan of Genshin's Raiden Shogun, so I had to pull for Acheron. I even managed to get her Lycone, but her team is not that great. I did end up putting in Gallagher, and he's kinda saved the team. Before this, I was running either Lynx or Bailu as a sustain, and they just did not cut it. Gallagher is pretty freaking good. This is my last team, and if you notice its name, you may know what it's for. I've got a lot of friends with high constellation fireflies, so I built this team to clear Sunday's boss fight, and I just borrow her for a little bit. I'm sure you're interested in my characters, so here's the list of who I have before I show you them in depth. Big warning about my characters here, they're not built all that well. Unlike in Genshin where I spent a long time farming artifacts, I spent the majority of my time in Star Rail leveling up traces. Quite a few of my characters have maxed out traces but poor or unfinished builds. I'm going to be talking about some characters more than others, so if there's anyone you want to see specifically, use the timestamps to peruse at your leisure. Starting it off with the OG limited character Seele. I actually lost my 50-50 to her, so I was a bit frantic going through the story to get her. Her voice lines are awesome and she has a scythe, so she was worth it. Unfortunately, her stats just aren't as good. It took me a while to get her enough crit rate to actually activate the arena set. I'd like to get her to at least 70-160 and drop her speed down to base. She's on Stellar C and her traces are maxed out. My Seele does have some pretty awful pieces. It felt like a waste to farm her relics because of the secondary set, so once I got usable pieces I stopped. Seele is a personal favorite of mine, but it feels like I can't really use her anymore. Even before the break meta started, Seele was only ever useful if the enemy had quantum weakness. I don't have Silverwolf, so I can't force Seele into content where there's no weaknesses. My other issue is my Seele cannot hypercarry. Her damage is pretty good, but it's not enough to clear endgame content. Although I haven't used Seele since before I got my Bronya, so she may feel a bit better than the last time I used her. Next up is my favorite carry in the game, Blade, and oh boy do I have things to say about him. Right off the bat, you'll notice his crit rate is at exactly 49.9%, and yes, it kills me every time I see it. I spent every single self-modeling resin I had to try and get him that last 0.1%, but it just never happened. Unfortunately, he is still on Arlen's Lycone, and I'm just hoping for that third rerun soon. His traces are maxed out, and he is C0. Blade is actually my most invested character, and he still kinda sucks. I have him on triple HP, so he's pretty slow. Bronya is a recent addition and not built yet, so that's why she's not on his team. I've used Blade every single day since I got him, so I'm pretty aware of what his issues are. The main issue my Blade has is the Lycone. The extra stats his signature gives would be very beneficial and are always present. Secret Vow loses half its effect whenever Blade uses his follow-up attack. My Blade's ult and follow-up attacks are good damage, but he's too slow to really use them effectively. Even with Jingliu speeding up his stacks and Lynx giving him extra taunting, it's not enough to clear content. Most of the support characters buff attack, which isn't good for Blade. The exceptions are Sparkle, Ruan Mei, and Robin to some extent, where they all buff damage. Lynx is Blade's only dedicated support, making him feel just a little weaker than everyone else. Blade's not unusable or anything, but compare the idea of HP scaling units to break effect units, and you'll see why he just feels bad. I know my Blade is nowhere near perfect, and he needs work, but for the amount of investment I put into him, I wish he was a bit better. But you know, everyone has their own thoughts. What do you think of him right now? If you have Blade, how's he working out for you? So if you know me, you'll know I have a thing for white and pink haired anime girls, ice, and just a little bit of insanity. You combine all that together, and you can see why I love Jingliu so much. much. Again, you may hear me say this a lot, but my Jingliu isn't very good. She's 2400 attack, 130 speed, and 33 to 180 crit. She's on the Fall of an Eon, maxed out traces, and C0. Jingliu probably has some of the most disgustingly bad pieces out of all of my characters. I can only use the ice set on her, so farming it just feels like a huge waste of time for me currently. In the future, I may end up splitting up the Blade Jingliu team, and when I do, I need to make sure to give her some better pieces. Jingliu is not a bad character whatsoever. She doesn't do as much damage as Acheron or Firefly, but that doesn't really matter. Honestly, I don't really have any complaints about Jingliu. She's got good, consistent damage, feels well supported, can be built super easy due to her talents, and she's carried me alongside Blade through the entire game. I'm gonna aim for some crit and attack on her and rebuild her, and she'll be even more goated. Next is Acheron, and goddamn is she crazy. I gave her the bare minimum and she still puts in work. 4k attack and 50 to 165 crit on her signature light cone. Her traces are maxed and she's C0. I had some promising looking pieces for her, but a lot of tragic rolls. I also don't have her on a lightning piece because farming the Izumo set was a pain since I had to do it manually. Acheron is pretty good, but my team options for her are super limited at C0. I don't pull for dupes and I'm lacking a lot of good supports, but even without them, Acheron is a great carry. Again, I don't really have complaints for her. I want to get her some better pieces and swap her to a lightning orb, but that's about it. She already has a signature weapon, so I'm probably not going to give her any new characters or any duplicates. I spent a while building up Ratio, but he didn't have the damage or the speed needed to help me too much. He has 3500 attack and 59 to 167 crit. I have him on Gwyneth's artifact, but I think that was a mistake. I don't really have many Lycones for him right now, so I'll have to do some more research to see what's good. He's also C0 with maxed out traces. I had Ratio built on Musketeer originally and haven't fully swapped him over to the Pioneer set. He's got some decent pieces, but obviously he needs to be swapped to his best in slot set. Ratio felt really shit the last time I used him, but that's because I didn't really understand what he needed. I now have Topaz and can use them together, so I'm hoping he can really come in clutch in the future. I really like his voice lines and he seems like he's doing some pretty good damage on his follow-ups, so if I can make them more consistent, he'll be a lot better. Welt isn't very interesting because he's currently in a state of rebuild. I have him on a 3-star light cone and I'm transitioning him off of his Musketeer set. He's at C1 with maxed out traces and his only notable stat is 141 speed. Welt was a character I had early on but didn't feel was good because I didn't know what he needed. He's got a couple different builds, but since I'm going to be using him with Acheron more, I'm just going to put him on high speed. Okay, to be honest, I didn't even realize he was missing pieces, so that probably explains why he hasn't been performing as good recently. Black Swan may seem a little bit out of place in my account, and that's because I've never had a dot team. Oh, so why'd you pull her then? It's very simple. Hot. Also, there was this song that I got super obsessed with by Hala CG that basically made me pull the character just off that song. All Black Swan stats are just too low for what she needs. I need more attack, more speed, and more regen. She has Sampo's Lycone, maxed out traces, and C0. Black Swan's pieces are actually pretty bad because I had no reason to farm the prisoner set at the time, so I gave her what little I farmed and moved on from there. Honestly, she's been one of the more useless pulls I've done. I only really use her if I need some debuff triggers for another character or if I need an Ahilde character for Acheron. I thought Kafka was mandatory for her, so I never built a dot team. Kafka is a character I want to get, so I'll probably avoid building Black Swan until I get her. So on to my supportive characters. I'll start off with Xuan. And you may be sick of me saying it, but she needs work. And a lot of it. I want to get her off the 3-star light cone she's on now that I have access to Texture of Memories. I would put her on Japard's light cone, but she's still on my Blade team, so I can't do that yet. Of course she's triple crown and she's on 2p speed, 2p HP. She's on HP speed, HP, but I want to swap her to an energy regen light cone. Also C0. Xuan has been a bit of a letdown as time goes on. The build I gave her just hasn't held up, and she's also completely unable to sustain any of my teams. Once I get her a new rope and a better light cone, I'm hoping she starts feeling better. It may even be necessary for me to get her a defense piece because she's just far too squishy. It's only now that I'm taking a step back and really looking at characters that I can identify just how my characters have suffered from my goal of maxing out everything and not investing into them. I got Ruan Mei because I was enamored with her, but I never bothered learning how she works. At one point in time I read her skills and knew how she worked, but that was a long time ago. She has 136 speed and 198 break effect. I have her on Memories of Past, maxed out Traces, and C0. When I was building her, all I knew is that she needed break effects, so I tried to hit 200. I never felt like Ruan Mei was all that useful for my account. I never focused on breaking too much since I didn't have a dot team. I knew she was super OP, but Blade and Jingliu didn't seem to care. Now that I have Gallagher and Harmony Stelle, I find I'm using her more often and she feels super solid. I'd like to get her that last 2 break effect, but she's working for me super well. I only pulled Sparkle because I got caught up in her release hype. I vastly overestimated how much I would use her. She's 151 speed and 191 crit damage. She's on Past and Future, maxed out Traces, and C0. I just put her on 2-piece HP, 2-piece speed, and tried to stack as much crit damage as I could. I've only used Sparkle in my Seele team where she performs pretty well. Since my main team uses both Blade and Jingliu, I've never really needed Sparkle all that much. Harmony Trailblazer is broken, no doubt about it. She's got 136 speed and 181 break effect. I have her on Memories of the Past, maxed out Traces, and C2. I built her similarly to Ruan Mei where I just look for break effect and speed. It's also just now that I'm realizing she's not even fully maxed out. Even missing 2 artifacts, she's been working splendidly for me. You can't really take issue with Harmony Stelle. She's literally designed for the meta and works so well. Stelle actually carried me through my first Sunday clear. All my characters died, but through some miracle I was able to solo his last phase through a combination of Pom Pom's train and her break effect giving me an impenetrable shield. Bailu is just a standard healer. I used her over Natasha because she's a 5-star and that's about it. She has 6800 HP and 138 speed. She's on her artifact with max traces and C1. Like most of my supports, I have her on 2-piece speed and 2-piece HP. Honestly, nowadays I hardly use Bailu. If I need a healer, I use Gallagher or Lynx. Gallagher's healing feels stronger since he can solo sustain pretty easily for me. Unless some new artifact set comes out that makes Bailu really broken, she's just gonna be a backup healer. Like I said, Bronya is relatively new to my account, so I haven't had time to actually build her. She's sitting at 120 speed with 180 crit damage on the Dance artifact. I have her traces maxed out and she's C0. She mostly has pieces as leftovers from other supports, but if I upgrade her boots, she can get pretty quick. I'm not sure what speed tuning is like in this game, so I haven't bothered upgrading her stuff. I think I'm supposed to run her 1 speed slower than my DPS, but I'm not sure. Let me know how you've built your Bronyas and how she is performing for you. The last of my 5 stars are Jade and Topaz. They both have similar investment, but aren't actually built. Unlike Bronya, who I can just throw leftover gear scraps on, both these characters need a lot of work to do their jobs. They're both at level 80, have level 1 light cones, no trace upgrades, random pieces of gear, and C0. I actually have enough character materials to level them both, but I'm missing tracks of destiny. I'm either going to ignore them completely until I have enough tracks to upgrade them both at once, because I thought that would be a pretty good video, or I'll upgrade them as high as possible while I farm relics. Honestly, I haven't decided yet. Topaz and Jade were both pulled because I think they're so pretty, and because I thought they could buff my existing teams. Jade for Blade and Topaz for Ratio. So that's the end of my 5 stars, and it's time to move on to what 4 stars I use. Oh my god, I just noticed for every single thing I've said in this video, I'm pantomiming and using my hands and there's nobody watching. This is so embarrassing. I'm not going over every 5-star I have or every 4-star I have because most of them just aren't that interesting. Lynx was my go-to healer before Gallagher came out. I still use her with Blade because she's the only— why am I talking like that? What the fuck? Lynx was my go-to healer before Gallagher came out. I still use her with Blade because she's the only character in the game that's designed to go with him. She has 135 speed, shared feeling light cone, maxed out traces, and C5. She's on 2-piece speed and 2-piece HP. I may swap her chest to healing bonus because her healing isn't that good. She can't solo sustain both my Blade and Jingliu, so I've been a bit disappointed with her. If I could buff up Lynx's healing and Blade and Jingliu's damage, I could finally take Xuan off the team for Ruan Mei or something. Gallagher has been such a wild character. He's been able to solo sustain my Acheron team through basically anything. He has 135 speed and 129 break effect. I have him on his signature light cone, max traces, and C6. I'd like to get his break effect and speed higher, but I mostly just have him on spare pieces. His planar stuff isn't maxed out because I want to swap him to the Talia set for some extra break effect. I just don't have much of that set. Also, that was a lie. I just didn't realize his pieces weren't maxed out and I was a little bit embarrassed. I do want to swap him over though. My Gallagher has some crazy damage. Having him makes me want Firefly just so there can always be fire weak enemies. Other than my healers, Pela is my most used support. She just gives so much utility to other characters. I have her on 142 speed, Luca's light cone, max out traces, and C6. Pela's on the Eagle set because I was trying to build a team for golden gears and this is what was recommended. It's worked so far in everything I've used her for, so I doubt I'll swap her off. I don't really have much to say about her other than she's been a godsend. Tingyun at the start of the game was the support everyone everyone had on every team, so I built her and haven't really used her much since then. She's my fastest character at 159 speed, has the Dance light cone, maxed out traces, and C6. She's on a 4-piece set of messenger, but realistically I could make her so much faster. Other than my Seele team, Tingyun doesn't get used. Blade doesn't build much attack, so Tingyun's skills aren't that great for him. My Acheron needs a secondary Nihility character because she's C0, so I can't use Tingyun there, which leaves Ratio as my only possible team to use her on right now. My current plan for Ratio, however, is Ratio, Topaz, Pela, Xuan because I need as many debuffs as possible. This plan might change with March though, since I've heard she's pretty good, but as it stands, Tingyun just doesn't have a slot in any of my teams. If I get more luxury units, constellations, or weapons, I can start throwing her in here and there, but until that point I probably can't use her that much. Asta is the last of my characters that have fully maxed out traces, but she's not built. I tried building up my supports early on because I thought Star Rail would be similar to Genshin, where your 4-star supports are king, but that just hasn't been true. I realized after finishing her traces, she doesn't really have synergy with any of my units. I stopped giving her attention and left her on the back burner. Now that I have both Himiko and Topaz, there may be room to use her as sort of like a fire unit buffer, but it's going to be a long time before Himiko is actually built. That marks the end of the characters that I consider built. The remaining ones may have some investment from when I used them early game, but haven't been touched since or at all. Because these units aren't interesting, I'll just say which ones I still want to build. March, Japard, Don Hung, Yukong, Gwynafin, Hook, Herta, Serval, Sampo, Shui, Qingzhou, and Himiko. I know I said I would discuss my thoughts on Star Rail vs Genshin, but I spent the last 4 hours rewriting everything I've thought of. I can't say everything I want to in as much detail as I need without making the video too long. I'm a very opinionated person, and I talk a lot, so I'm not going to try to fit it in. That's what she said. If you're an odd duck and you actually want to hear me ramble about this stuff, be sure to let me know. Oh, and I forgot I'm supposed to tell you to subscribe. But anyways, that's it. That's all I got for you. Thank you for your time and have a wonderful day.
That won't ever change. Yeah, sometimes I'm mad, sometimes I'm okay. Yeah, I know I'll have what I want someday. I need my space now so I can feel nothing. I live this nightmare so